And so I'm going to take a little bit of cornstarch. Now the formula for this, which is in the ingredient list, is always 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and 1 tablespoon of cold water. But I'm looking for a specific texture here. It doesn't matter if I measure this. The important thing is that I got the slurry right. Let me use the back of this spoon here. Could stick my fingers in there. If you're making a large amount of this, you should add the cornstarch to the water. It makes it go in smoother and faster. But this is okay. We're doing fine. So there's our cornstarch slurry. You see there? It's all one thing now, right? Now we're going to bring over here to the brown juice. Turn it up. It's been coming to a boil. Now I'm going to show you the texture of the brown juice now so you can see the before and after effects of thickening it, okay? This is one of the things called how to make sauce. The difference between sauce and stock is one is thicker and one's not, and sauce has a tendency to have had a series of flavoring considerations imposed on it. That's why it's called sauce. Otherwise, it's usually referred to as gravy, which would be thickened stock, but not particularly refined, okay? Now, you see the broth texture. Here, it's like very watery. You see what I mean? Now, I'm going to use a little bit of cornstarch in here. And I could thicken this with just cornstarch if I wanted to. Now, you'll see already, you can't really see, but I can see, excuse me. It tightened up just slightly, but not enough. Now, I'm going to put another little pinch of cornstarch slurry in there. That's thickening. Now, I'm adding this to the boiling stock. Cornstarch normally thickens things because you add it to the boiling or simmering liquid. You normally would not put cornstarch into a cold stock or sauce because cornstarch thickens it so fast, you can see its effects immediately. So you can add, mix until you get it to exactly where you want it. Roux, which we're going to go to in a minute, isn't quite like that. You have to be a little bit more measured in your approach to how much you're adding to the sauce. And typically you do want to add the roux to the sauce when it's cold. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But for right now, this is starting to get a clean plate here so it's easier to look at. I'm getting a little bit thicker. Okay. Now here's what I'm going to do. I've got this thing reduced down to a fairly good concentrated flavor. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that cook for a minute. And while I'm doing that, we're going to make a little bit of roux. We're going to talk about roux, and I'm going to add a pinch of roux also to this. So in fact, in the demonstrated case in this lecture about thickening agents and liaisons, the 3 that I'm covering in this lesson, I'm going to impose and use all 3 of them into this one stock to show you the flexibility of using your different thickening agents. Again, I like to say and emphasize that I could just continue using cornstarch, and it would have that nice translucent look. But I'm going to add a pinch of roux to this. And because I've been using reducing as an element of thickening this, I now have all 3 of the thickening agents that we're using in this particular lesson in that one little pot. You could, of course, just use the roux also. You don't have to use the cornstarch and the roux in this particular case. Okay, you do whatever you want. And I want you to understand this. This goes back to the spirit of cooking. There's a lot of people out there that say, well, you must thicken this with cornstarch or you must thicken this with roux. And I'm here to tell you that you can use a little bit of both or neither one of them if you want to, okay? As long as you understand the outcome of using them, they will always be slightly different. Obviously, if you use a little bit of roux in the sauce or the stock to thicken it, coupled with the cornstarch, it's not going to have that complete translucent look. It doesn't mean that it's not going to have a beautiful sheen and be a great sauce. It just means it won't have the cornstarch look, okay? So, let's go back to the sauce for a second. And it has thickened up slightly. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of butter, and I'm going to put it in the sauce, in this little saute pan here. We're going to make a small amount of roux, and we're going to talk about roux. Let's talk about the roux right now. R-O-U-X, roux. There are a number, as in about 5, and I'll count them for you up in a second here when I'm done, levels of cooking that are applied to these flour and oil/butter mixtures. So roux is defined as flour added to some kind of fat or oil. Traditionally, clarified butter or whole butter. Usually clarified. We're using whole butter today. It's no big deal. Now, some people will use olive oil or half butter, half olive oil. Somebody else might use vegetable oil to make their roux. So it's fat. Could be duck fat, could be goose fat, could be any kind of fat, could be chicken fat. You could take schmaltz and mix flour into it after you melt it. So schmaltz meaning chicken fat. That, of course, would be the Jewish reference term for chicken fat. So anyway, we got some melted butter here, and I'm going to take a little bit of all-purpose flour. Again, just like the cornstarch, roux has the same measurements. 1 tablespoon of clarified butter, 1 tablespoon of flour. But that's all good to know, and that's all fine and dandy to know. But what you really want to know is what is the texture that you want to end up with. So in this particular case, I've got a certain amount of butter in there, and it doesn't matter how much it is. It only matters what the texture is of the roux when I'm done. And I'll tell you why in a second. So we'll just add a little bit of flour to the butter, mix it in. Now you don't want it too thick, and that's what I mean by texture. Now there's a reason why you don't want it too thick. You don't want it too thick because if you intend on cooking the roux, you want it to be able to cook evenly. If it's really thick, it won't be able to lay out in the pan well and cook now. Now this mixture right here, which is just slightly thin, I'm going to put a pinch more flour in there, okay? Maybe more than a pinch. Maybe about 20 pinches, okay? All right, now just want to get that a little bit thicker. Now this mixture right here, okay, this is called beurre manie. That means flour and oil or butter that have never been cooked. Now, if you don't want your sauce to taste floury, which can happen if you're not careful, you use beurre manie because the flour is not cooked. The more you cook the flour, the less it shows up in your sauce as tasting like flour, okay? So there's your, what they call beurre manie, which is one of the thickening agents that we will use from time to time throughout this course. Not today, though, in terms of this here. Now, if I cook this, which I'm going to do right now, for about 3 or 4 minutes on top of the stove, we will have what's called pale roux, which is slightly cooked but not brown, okay? We're going to let that sit back there and cook for a couple of minutes. And the reason we're doing that is that, first of all, a slightly nutty flavor begins to be taken on by the flour in the roux, and ultimately you'll be adding that flavor into your stock and sauce, slightly nutty flavor. More importantly, it reduces the flour taste when you make the roux pale rather than the beurre manie, which is not cooked, okay? Beurre manie you keep around or use when you've either didn't have time to process the roux or put it in or skim the sauce or whatever it is, and you needed to add something to it at the end to your sauce to thicken it quickly, and you didn't feel like using cornstarch. That's where beurre manie comes in. It's more of a convenience roux sitting around. You could, of course, make pale roux or brown roux and use that as your convenience roux also, okay?